Yo, what up dudes? Today I'm going to be talking about the best team in Zenless Zone Zero, and that team is Lykan, Ellen, and Sukaku. Obviously these are really good characters, but the biggest reason this is the best team is because the ice element, in my opinion, is the best element in this game. The reason being is because you have the ability to not only freeze your opponent, but it also causes shatter after the freeze is done, which does a good amount of damage. And then after that, you get frostbite, which increases your crit damage on the enemy. So that's a lot for just one anomaly buildup. Now let me tell you what this team's potential is. With this team, you have the potential to cause a lot of stuns and a lot of shatters, because these characters are probably the best at what they do. Like in my opinion and a lot of other people's opinion, is probably the best dazer in this game. Ellen is the best damage dealer in this game. Sukaku, I wouldn't say is the best support. I believe that belongs to Rina, but Sukaku's still up there. And to be honest, she's one of the most important parts to this team. I won't go too in depth on all these characters. Sukaku might be the one I go the most in depth on when it comes to her skill set. I'm mainly going to tell you how these characters work together. Now mind you, player expression does exist in this game. It's one of the best parts about this game, so anything that I tell you, never take that as something that you have to do. I can give you the tools and the kit. How you decide to use them is completely on you though, because fun comes first, always. Now, it's no secret that I'm not really a fan of having 3 characters with the same attribute on one team, because you never know when you're going to run into an enemy that's either resistant or immune to the element that you're using. But this is one of those teams where you just kind of bend those rules a bit. Starting off with Lykan, he's pretty simple. He does normal physical basic attacks, but if you hold down basic attacks, he'll do ice damage. It's the same thing with the special attack and X special attack. When you press a special attack, he'll do ice damage, but if you hold down to charge it up, it increases its power. When you have enough energy to do the X special attack, he does ice damage, but you can hold it down to do even more ice damage. The biggest thing for Lykan on this team is his passives. When you charge his basic attacks to completion, it deals way more daze. But the biggest thing is when his X special attack or assist follow-up lands on an enemy, the target's ice damage resistance is decreased by 25% for 30 seconds. So that's one reason why I say that you can probably at least a little bit get away with having all the same attributes on one team. Because if you happen to run into any enemies with ice damage resistance, Lykan can decrease that by 25% for 30 seconds. So that's Lykan. Ellen is probably someone I'm not going to go over abilities really at all, because the reality is she's just your DPS, bro. Whatever Lykan and Sukaku cook with their abilities, it's also Ellen can just eat that, bro. Whether the enemy's frozen, dazed, shattered, it don't even matter, bro. It's for Ellen to do the most damage that she can. She really doesn't have any abilities that buff everybody else. Everything is about her buffing herself. And she's actually pretty easy to use, to be honest. Maybe if this was like a solo Ellen kit video, then I would go over her abilities, but as for the team video, all you gotta do is do damage with her. But she will have a place in this team rotation for sure, so keep that in mind. Now getting to Sukaku. Sukaku is the most important piece in this team because she buffs everybody. So her skill set is a little more important than the other two. And I don't even need to go over her entire skill set. I'm just gonna go over the most important, and that has to do with her special attack. And that is when you hold the special attack and transition into Fly the Flag. Fly the Flag is pretty much where she shoves her weapon into the ground and then an ice vortex type of deal happens, and it deals ice damage to everyone around you. When you hit anybody with that ability, it automatically triggers a reactive assist. But the most important key to this ability is stacking a vortex so that it allows you to get buffs to all your teammates. And I'm gonna get into that right now. Okay, so how do we stack vortex? You can stack vortex by either launching an X special attack or a chain attack, or you can get all 3 stacks of vortex when launching an ultimate. You can only have a maximum of 3 stacks of vortex. You automatically consume the stacks of vortex when you use Fly the Flag by holding your special attack. Well, what do these stacks of vortex do? Well, that has to do with her passive abilities. When Sukaku launches Fly the Flag, her attack is increased, but when you consume vortex, that is doubled. The buff can be passed to other characters via chain attacks or assist attacks. So if you use Fly the Flag, which triggers an instant assist, then you can pass that buff to the next person that you assisted to. And that's just your core passive. Your faction or attribute buff is when Sukaku consumes Vortex to activate Fly the Flag, the ice damage of the squad is increased by 20%. And that is given to the whole team no matter what. So no matter who you switch to, whatever, everyone's going to have that buff, which is huge for this team, which is why you have the ability to cause, or I should say, is a contributing factor of why you can cause so much shatters. Now the prompt doesn't say that you need to consume all stacks of Vortex to get the ice damage buff, but I've noticed that I didn't get the ice damage buff unless I used all 3. So word of advice for Sukaku is to build up all 3 stacks of Vortex before you consume them to get the maximum buff. So that's pretty much Sukaku's part in this team. Now that we know what we know about Sukaku's buffs, the order in which you want to place your team really matters. For me personally, I place it Lykan, Sukaku, and Ellen. No matter what order you put it in, having Ellen go right after Sukaku is always going to be a good plan because you want to pass Sukaku's buff to Ellen at all times. And with Ellen being right after her, your assist will always go to Ellen. Now you think Ellen does a lot of damage by herself. Imagine with Sukaku's damage and ice buff at the same time. And as for the ice anomaly buildup, you have no idea how many times I've frozen an elite enemy in the middle of their combos and just completely interrupted them. And all the damage you get from doing the shatter effect and the frostbite effect with Ellen can be pretty crazy. Not even just the ice anomaly buildup, but also the stuns I get from Lykan. You have the potential to interrupt the enemy multiple times. Now as for W engines, I know these are not something you can go out and just farm. It's just based on what you pull. So I'm going to give a simple breakdown of what I do, and what you do could be completely different than what I do. For Lykan, anything when it comes to W engines and disk drives, anything that raises impact and helps build days is what I put for Lykan. I use the Shockstar Disco set. The 2-piece increases impact by 6%. The 4-piece means basic attacks, dash attacks, and dodge counters inflict 20% more days to the main target. So everything so I can get as much stuns as possible for Lykan. As for Ellen, her best W engine is obviously her signature W engine, which I do not have. Besides that, anything that increases your ice damage, crit rate, and crit dam is always good. I have a super simple W engine that does basic attack, dash attack, and dodge counter damage increases by 20%. For the disc set, I have the Polar Metal, which increases ice damage by 10% for the 2-piece, and then the 4-piece it increases basic attack, dash attack by 20%. But when any squad member inflicts freeze or shatter, this effect increases by an additional 20% for 12 seconds. So I chose to go the route of ice damage, but you can definitely go the route of crit dam. Like you can go with the Woodpecker Electro, which increases crit rate. But for what I'm trying to accomplish, I just went with the Polar Metal Disco set. And that's pretty much the same for Sukaku. I went with the same thing, Polar Metal. For Sukaku's W engine, I went with the Bashful Demon. The rate's up right now if you're trying to go for Ellen's weapon, and it increases ice damage by 24% when launching an X special attack. All squad members' attack increases by 3.2% for 12 seconds, stacking up to 4 times. So that helps your team out even more than she already does. So that's huge. And getting that ice damage increase from using your X special attack when you know you're going to be using that a lot is pretty huge as well. So yeah, that's pretty much it, man, for why I think this is the best team, and it's probably the overall best team in this game. I think I covered pretty much everything. I might have missed a couple things here and there, but yeah, dude, this team can cause a lot of stuns and a lot of shatter, and that just melts HP bars, I'm telling you. Not only that, but it just interrupts your enemies a shit ton. If you have a chance to put this team together, you should, but use it in a way that you want to use them. You don't have to use it a certain way at all, I don't believe. So yeah, thank you for listening, and I hope you have a good day.